So, you want to start your first project in DaVinci Resolve, but every time you look for tutorials, instead of finding what you need, you get overwhelmed by all sorts of technicalities that you don't need as of the moment. Trust me, I've been there. So today, we'll focus on just 3 essential things that you actually need to start. First, how to import and set up your project. We'll set up your timeline, bring in your footage, and organize everything you need for your project. Second, how to edit your project. We'll go through the essential parts of the edit page and learn how to put your footage together using the basic tools you actually need. And lastly, how to export your project. I'll show you the basic export settings you need to get your finished video out of DaVinci and ready to share. These are the simple steps you need to know as a beginner to get started with DaVinci Resolve. So let's get started. Once you've opened DaVinci Resolve, you'll be greeted by the Project Manager. This is where DaVinci keeps all of your different projects. For this tutorial, let's create a new project. Click New Project, and I'm going to name this First Test Edit. Then click Create. And now we're inside DaVinci Resolve. For this tutorial, we're going to keep things really simple and work almost entirely inside the edit page. So let's go straight there. You might notice that DaVinci has a lot of other pages down here. There's the media page, cut page, the edit page, fusion page, color page, Fairlight page, and the deliver page. Each one is designed for a different part of the post-production process. And if you're a complete beginner, seeing all of these different pages and tools can definitely feel overwhelming. But don't worry about any of that for now. For this project, we're going to focus on the edit page and we'll use the deliver page when we're ready to export. Before we start importing anything, let's set up our project. Down here in the bottom right corner, you'll find this little gear icon. This opens our project settings. There are a lot of settings here, but we're only going to change 2 things for this project. First is our timeline resolution. I'm going to set this to 3840 by 2160, which is 4K UHD. This basically determines the size of the canvas we're editing on. Next is our timeline frame rate. I'm going to set this to 30 frames per second. This means our video will display 30 individual frames every second. For this tutorial, we're going to use 4K at 30 frames per second, so if you're following along with me, you can use the same settings. Once you're done, click Save. Now, before we start editing, make sure you've downloaded the practice files from the description below. I've prepared the same footage and music that I'm using in this tutorial so you can follow along with me. Now, let's import our footage directly into the edit page. This area here is called the media pool. The easiest way to think about it is simply this is where all of the media for your project lives. Your video clips, music, images, and other assets can all be stored here. I'm going to open my practice files, select my video clips, and drag them directly into the media pool. And now, all of our footage is inside the project. You can also import files by right-clicking inside the media pool and choosing Import Media, but for now, dragging your files directly here is probably the easiest way to do it. Now, if you're only working with a handful of clips, you could technically leave everything here, but as your projects get bigger, having all of your media in one place can get messy pretty quickly. So let's organize it. In DaVinci, these folders are called bins. Right-click inside the media pool, select New Bin, and let's call this one Video. Then let's create another one for music. Now I'll put all of my video clips inside the video bin and the music inside the music bin. It's a really simple habit, but it'll make your life much more easier once you're working with larger projects. Before we start cutting, let's quickly go over the main areas of the edit page. I'm not yet going to explain every button you see here. I only want you to understand the parts we're actually going to use today. We already talked about the media pool. This is where we access all of the media we've imported into our project. Next is the viewer. This is where we preview our footage and see what we're working on. If I double-click a clip from the media pool, I can preview it here. And once we start editing on the timeline, this will show us our actual edit. Then we have the timeline. This is where we'll arrange our clips, cut them, trim them, move them around, and decide exactly what the viewer sees and when they see it. These horizontal rows are called tracks. This is video track 1 or V1, and underneath it, we have audio track 1 or A1. So our video clips will live on the video tracks, while our music can sit on an audio track underneath. And finally, we have the inspector. Think of this as the control panel for whatever you've selected. If I select a video clip, the inspector gives me controls for things like its position, zoom, rotation, cropping, and opacity. We're only going to use a few of these today, but this is where you'll find them. Alright, let's actually start editing. Since we're making a bit sync travel montage, I'm gonna start with the most important part of the edit, the music. I'll drag our music down to audio track 1, and now we're going to use this track to guide the pacing of our entire video. The goal isn't to cut every single clip exactly on every bit. Instead, we're going to listen for the stronger bits and use those as our main cutting points. So I'll play the music, and whenever I hear a bit that I want to cut on, I'll place a marker. You can press M to add a marker at the current playhead position. I'll repeat that throughout the section of the music we're going to use. And now we have a real simple guide for where we can make our cuts. Now let's bring our footage into the timeline. I'm going to start with this wide shot. For now, don't worry about getting the timing perfect. We're just going to get our footage onto the timeline first. Now let's start cutting our footage into the music. One way to make a cut is using the blade tool. You can select it here or use the keyboard shortcut B. I'll place my playhead on one of our markers and make a cut. Now I can select the section that I don't want and remove it. But you don't always need to use the blade tool. If you simply want to make a clip shorter, you can grab the edge of the clip and drag it. This is called trimming. So if I want this shot to start a little later, I can simply grab the edge and drag it. You'll probably use this constantly once you start editing. Now let's actually sync our footage to the music. I'll line up the end of this shot with our first marker, then we'll cut to the next shot on the next bit. And another one here, and another one there, and another one here. And that's really all we're doing. We're not adding a transition between every clip, we're not adding complicated effects, we're simply making clean cuts at the right moments. Now watch what happens when we play this back. Even though we're only using simple cuts, the video already feels much more dynamic. That's because we're letting the music control the pacing. So as a beginner, don't feel like you need a fancy transition every time you move from one clip to another. Good timing can already do a lot of the work for you. And once you get comfortable with clean cuts, you can start experimenting with more advanced techniques later. Now, some of our clips already have movement in them, so we can simply let the footage speak for itself. But what about a shot like this? There isn't much movement happening here. Instead of leaving it completely static, we can use dynamic zoom to add a little movement. First, select the clip, then head over to the inspector panel, and you can see here the dynamic zoom. Now, this automatically creates a zoom movement for the clip. It's just a quick way to add some movement to a shot that doesn't have much going on. Now, let's add a simple title to our video. Open the effects library, go to titles, and let's use text plus. I'll drag it onto a video track above our footage. Once it's selected, we can use the inspector to change the text and adjust how it looks. I'm calling this nature. And we can change the font, size, position, and other basic settings from the inspector. But again, let's keep this simple. The point here is just to introduce our video. And finally, let's add a simple fade at the beginning and end of our video. If you look at the top corner of the clip, you'll see this little fade handle. Just drag it inward, and you've created a fade. I'll do the same thing at the end. And that's it! And now, let's see what we've made. And that's our first edit. There are still hundreds of other tools inside DaVinci Resolve that we didn't touch today, and that's completely fine. Now let's export our video. Go down here and open the Deliver page. This is where we'll export our finished video. There are a lot of settings here, but we're going to keep this really simple. For this project, I'm going to use Custom Export, then select a folder in your desktop where you want to save your finished output. For the format, we'll use MP4. For the codec, we'll use H.264. One more thing I want you to understand before we export is what we're currently exporting. Here, you'll see the option for the entire timeline. If you want to export your whole project, just leave this set to the entire timeline. But DaVinci also lets you choose a specific section of your timeline using in and out points. If I place my playhead here and press I create an in point. Then I can move to another point and press O to create an out point. Now, DaVinci knows that I only want to export this section. So if you're ever wondering why only part of your timeline is being exported, check whether you've accidentally set in and out points. For our project, I'm going to export the entire timeline. Once everything looks good, click Add to Render Queue, and then click Render All. DaVinci will now render our finished video. And there we go! We just created and exported our first video in DaVinci Resolve. If you're learning DaVinci Resolve and you want to keep things simple without getting overwhelmed by information, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.